But right now, let's bring in Mark from Anaheim. Mark, welcome back to WOL Radio.
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Good afternoon, Mr. Nelson. Good afternoon to the listeners. How you feeling, sir?
I'm feeling great. You heard Jim says he's not afraid of anything. You know, some people are kind of scared because of what happened this week.
Scared? Dude, the suicide hotline is going ballistic. They got to bring in new staff and volunteers in the last 48 hours. Seriously.
Are you serious about that?
I'm serious.
Because I know the calls about people who want to move to Canada. I understand that crashed that website.
Get all these young millennials, college students, high school students, and they are tying up the suicide lines ever since Trump got elected. And not just them, but also a lot of immigrants. Everybody's scared. Everybody's uncertain. Everybody's frightened. I've been living for this day. Bring it on. If we can't get along, let's get it on.
You ready to rumble, huh?
Hey, man. I've been warning you folks for, since 1992 this day was coming. I stopped doing radio shows, as you know. Came back on your show in 2012 because I saw it now getting closer. And I told your listeners in 2012, Hillary Clinton could never be a U.S. president. So why the hell did the Democratic Party put her on the ticket to put your boy Donald Trump in the White House, who's going to be the first dictator this country has had? And I tried to warn your listeners. Hell, most of my mentors were World War II Nazis. If not by 2016, by 2020, you would have a dictator in the White House. Now your boy Barack Obama, George W. Bush, they passed all these executive orders, and even Obama talked, well, I'm never going to use any of these, but he put those executive orders on the book that will give Donald Trump or whoever else steps into that White House the powers of a dictator. And by the way, folks,
let me ask you this before you go any further, but it's the vote hasn't been ratified yet, so is there still a chance?
No, he's not officially even the president-elect yet because the Electoral College doesn't actually convene until, I believe, December 18th. And you could have some Electoral College folks. Now, I think the last time I checked, I think something like 27 states in this country have made it a misdemeanor, which means no big deal. Some people might be willing to take a misdemeanor when you're talking about the faith of the country, but it's a misdemeanor to vote against the popular vote of your state. But that leaves another 23 states that, yeah, they can basically vote any way they want. Like I told your listeners about a year ago, if they want to, they could put Donald Trump in as the vice president and Hillary as the president. American people don't vote for the president. Well, let me rephrase that. You vote for the president, but you don't decide who the president is. The Electoral College does. Just like in 2000 with Al Gore. Al Gore won the popular vote. Hillary Clinton's already won the popular vote, didn't she?
Right.
Did they say she's the president-elect?
No. But
right.
Is there still a way that she can win, though?
Yes, because the Electoral College on December 18th could vote differently from their respective states. If those Electoral College folks decide that they have a conscience and cannot vote for Donald Trump, they don't have to vote, even in Pennsylvania. Now, I believe Pennsylvania is one of those states that, it would take a significant number, like maybe 20 or more. But even in Pennsylvania, that they've said that Hillary needed to win. If those folks, enough of those Electoral College folks vote against the wishes of the popular vote in Pennsylvania, Hillary Clinton can still be deemed the president of the United States. I don't see it happening, but yes, it's very possible, but highly improbable.
Has it happened before?
Yes, we've had Electoral College folks that have voted. In fact, even right now, as I'm talking to you, there's at least one known Electoral College member in Georgia who is not going to vote for Donald Trump. He's already stated that his consciousness will not allow him to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, here's the other question.
By the way,
yeah,
he's an immigrant.
I was going to ask. So, are they identified? Because
it's mostly kept secret. But this person evidently didn't mind discussing this matter with others. No, he's already said he cannot vote for Donald Trump. But since most people in this country really don't know how U.S. government operates, they don't take history classes, civics classes, and government classes, because they can get their sociology and psychology and home ec and auto mechanics, and that gives them credit in those areas instead of learning how this government works. That's why I come on your show, Mr. Nelson, because every 4 years people get so impassioned. I mean, they're not talking to their families. They're not talking.
Hang on a second, Mark. We're running late. We got to take this traffic weather update right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. As I told you earlier, you're going to hear some stuff you've probably never heard before. Mark's not his real name. He's real not from Anaheim, but that's a whole nother story. So, Mark, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying, and then you can introduce yourself formally.
I just love folks who not just 4 years, because, we have the midterm elections too, but they become so impassioned, don't talk to their families anymore. I just stopped communicating with a friend of mine that I've known since college, more than 30 years, over this election. We don't communicate with our relatives, our friends, our associates, our co-workers anymore. And here's the thing, Mr. Nelson, most of them don't know a damn thing about how U.S. politics really works. Now, I've been involved in U.S. politics since 1972, so I love it when new Johnny come on the scene talking like they know what the hell's going on. And with Facebook and these public social medias, everybody's got a damn opinion with no actual knowledge or facts. They go out there and get just enough information to be dangerous, and if it fits the already empathy bias of what they have, then they go out and they throw the stuff on Facebook like they're backing it up with knowledge. And I'll give you one. Now, I am no fan of Donald Trump, and that's, trust me, to say I'm no fan of Donald Trump is really not even close to reality. But I have friends who continue to this day posting this one photograph of Donald Trump where he was interviewed in People magazine back like in 78 or whatever, where he stated that he would purposely seek out Republicans because they're idiots, and he knows that they will believe anything he tells them because they have the low information voters, and he could become president. Even if Donald Trump felt that way, I'm telling you folks, that interview never happened. It was all made up. And it goes far worse with Hillary Clinton. Of course, I get sick and tired of the Benghazi thing, okay? Because so many lies have come out about Benghazi. But, you got a lot of idiots out there. And then you have a media, Mr. Nelson, where many of the people who are really scared today, because I jumped on the younger folks, it's always old white folks. They were scared of the Negro in the White House for 8 years. Because why? Because there are a lot of those racist bastards who knew what they would have done to black people if they were in the White House. So, my God, if a black guy gets in the White House, he's going to do the same thing to me. Well, those people live in constant fear. They lived in fear all their lives in a so-called Cold War. Now, Mr. Nelson, I'm a Cold War warrior. In fact, I'm entitled to the Cold War Medal. I haven't applied for it. During the entire Cold War, Mr. Nelson, and I've discussed with you in the past, the reason why Great Britain during the 1700s, 1800s was the greatest military might on the planet, because they had the largest navy. So I ask you, Mr. Nelson, who's had the largest navy since World War II? U.S. So who has the biggest military might in the world?
I think it's the U.S. Could be China, could be Russia.
Let me just make this simple for you folks. The United States spends more money on its armed forces than the next top 10 countries combined, and that includes Russia. Now, let me just tell you this, Mr. Nelson. During the entire Cold War, especially for you folks out there who were Cold Warriors like myself, Russia didn't even have an aircraft carrier. They didn't get an aircraft carrier until like in the late 70s. So if you don't have an aircraft carrier where you can project your military might by landing your forces, which I mean, after all, this is the Marine Corps birthday. Happy birthday, Double Dogs, 241st birthday. We are the pirates. We're the modern-day pirates. We go out on ships. We get off the ship. We kick your ass. We take your loot, and we bring it back to the U.S. That's our job. Definition, pirate. Other countries don't even have the capability of doing that. Russia to this day, as I'm speaking to you right now, Mr. Nelson, you know how many aircraft carriers Russia has?
No, how many?
One. And it is so decrepit that they have to carry a tugboat with it because it breaks down all the time. And I challenge during this show or any other show I ever appear on, Mr. Nelson, for your listeners to do your own little research and come back and say that I'm lying to you. It's all a BS game, Mr. Nelson. The Cold War was all BS. And all these guys who made all kinds of huge profits off the Cold War when Reagan said bring the wall down, and Reagan didn't have a damn thing to do with it. He just happened to be in the White House when the Soviet Union went bankrupt. But, you know, white people like to rewrite history so they give Reagan all this credit. Please. Reagan was an idiot. The only guy dumber than Reagan running for president is the one running right now, Donald Trump. But he surrounded himself with neoconservatives. Donald Trump's going to do the same thing because he knows he's an idiot. Today, Donald Trump met at the White House with President Bush. And then I say Obama. Why? Because Obama is the best Republican the Democratic Party has provided since Bill Clinton. So it's easy to blur the names. So Barack Hussein Obama met with Donald J. Trump today. They spent like 90 minutes in that room. And I've only been alive, less than 60 years. But I've never seen in my lifetime an incoming president meet with the present president for as long as they did. And did you hear any of Donald Trump after he came out of that meeting with President Barack Hussein Obama, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, he sounded like a different man.
He sounded like a punk, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did.
Because they sat his ass down and told him what things really are like in the White House, and now he realizes, oh, my God, this is no longer a reality show. I can't believe these dummies actually elected me, and now I'm going to have this responsibility. Oh, I can't wait to get back to the White House so Barack can tell me some more on what to do. And these white folks who put him in the White House are already going ballistic, Rush Limbaugh and everybody else, because all this crap that Donald Trump said to them, feeding into the xenophobia, feeding into their misogyny, feeding into their bigotry and racism. All of a sudden, they're like, damn, he's not going to indict Hillary. Damn, he said Barack Hussein Obama was a great guy. And they're going to probably be calling the suicide hotline tomorrow because that's politics. Mr. Nelson, Carroll Quigley, I still consider him the quintessential, I would say the political scholar of all times. And in 1964, he wrote the book Tragedy and Hope. Carroll Quigley was Georgetown University. Bill Clinton was tutored, mentored by Carroll Quigley. When Bill Clinton accepted the nomination for president in 1992, I must take this opportunity to thank my mentor, Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley says in his book, Tragedy and Hope. In fact, what I really should do is read it directly, but basically what he says is, the trick in this country is to make the two parties appear to be different. So every 4 years you can vote the rascals out without any significant change in policy. So a lot of folks will come on with all their expertise, and I'll be glad to deal with it because, I came on the show because today is the Marine Corps' birthday and tomorrow is Veterans Day. But I'm sure your listeners have a lot of questions about the election. If you really want to know how Hillary and Donald Trump ended up the two and how now Donald Trump is being declared the potential president-elect, I'll be glad to entertain that with you. I'll go step by step with you. I'll put it also on my Mark from Anaheim Political Sarcasm 101 Facebook site. Mark from Anaheim Political Sarcasm 101, and that's not a group site. That's the fan page site. I haven't used a group site in 6 years. But I'll put it on there and step by step for you folks because very little in politics happens by accident, and you've been had. Hillary Clinton is unelectable. I told you that back in 2012. And I'll give you all the reasons why she's unelectable. And they purposely gave you somebody who, one, the right wing would feel, okay, well, we'll feel better voting for Donald Trump instead of a Ted Cruz. And once they decided that, you had two people who are related by blood running for president, and you folks are fighting over it, blocking freeways over it, calling suicide hotlines over it, and you don't even damn decide which one of them, who were both selected by a private entity. The Democratic National Convention is a private entity. The Republican National Convention is a private entity. They decided who you're going to be selecting for president, and you folks are getting your feelings hurt, acting like the world's going to end when it's never been your damn world, and they're deciding how they're going to run their world. So I hope I simplified it as much as I can for you here, because I know this is being very simplistic, but that's basically what's going on. So before we get started, I just want to dedicate this show once again to my strong sisters and brothers who have the courage to go out there on the front lines fighting that damn pipeline in North Dakota. But I also want to dedicate this show to all the women and men who have worn the uniform proudly, didn't bring any dishonor or shame upon it, especially those like the Montford Point Marines, Tuskegee Airmen, Buffalo Soldiers, who paved the ways for those as myself. And I have to say, Mr. Nelson, especially today, two gentlemen from the Marine Corps who wore the uniform, Sergeant Major Edgar Huff and Sergeant Major Gilbert Johnson. You ever heard those names, Mr. Nelson?
Never heard of them.
I know, I'm being rhetorical. Sergeant Major Johnson, they used to call him Hashmark Johnson. Now, he served in the Army Air Corps, Navy, and the Marine Corps. And the reason he has Hashmark Johnson is because he had so many hash marks on his uniform, which signifies how many years he'd served, that they actually touched his stripes on his uniform. Now, the first military, and I hate that term military, but I know it's simpler to say that for this purpose today. The first military base in this country that was named after a black person was back in April 1974, where they used to train the Black Montford Point Marines during World War II. Down at Camp Lejeune, it is now called Camp Johnson. Never before in this country was an actual military base. Now, out here in California, the first town that was named after a former black Army lieutenant colonel is Allensworth, California, which most people never heard of. But the first all-black town in this country is out here near Bakersfield, Allensworth. But the first military base in this country ever named after a black.
Hang on a second, Mark. We got to take this quick break. We're running late. 800-450-7876. Speak to Mark. Your call's next on 1450. WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. Again, the number to call, speak to Mark, is 800-450-7876. Mark, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying before we left for the break.
To upset somebody, because my phone's been going ballistic since that break started. Anyway, what I was saying was, now the first all-black town in the United States was named after Lieutenant Colonel Allensworth, who was in the U.S. Army. And there's still people to this day suspect that he may have been actually killed purposely, but he died after being struck by a motorcycle here in L.A. So if you go out to Tulare County, Kern County area, near Bakersfield, there's an all-black town. And by the way, for all you blacks listening today who are in Hollywood, get your asses out there and use that place for a movie set. It is the perfect place to film movies, especially movies like anywhere between like the mid-1700s till the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, because most of the buildings there have been restored. I go out there just to get away from all the madness here in Orange County, LA County. I go up there, and I'm all by myself. There's never anybody there. Now, you know, back in the day when we used to do shows here in L.A., I used to actually go out there and provide training, because they had one lonely state guard, an armed guard, but he was by himself out there, and I used to actually provide, because they get no tactics training. So I used to go up there with my children and give them tactics training and stuff. And the Allensworth family still exists, so they used to have an annual little barbecue picnic or whatever. Funny, I never get invited, in spite of all the things I've done free of charge, driving up there at my own expense, because that's how colored folks are. But I didn't go up there to get any recognition. So I still go up there by myself. I'm by it myself, Mr. Nelson. I'll park my truck and ride my bicycle around the whole town, and I'm all alone. And most people who live in the area don't even know about the place. The only people who I even talk to while I'm there are the few state employees that are hired to come maintain the grounds. And every once in a while, some deputy sheriff will drive by out of curiosity, and I'm giving them history of the place, and they live out there and never even know about it. And I guarantee you 99.9% of your listeners right now have never heard of Allensworth. They're busy typing right now on their computers, Allensworth. What the hell is he talking about? Because we don't know our own history. Seriously. But back in North Carolina, at Camp Lejeune, as we say correctly, Camp Lejeune, there's a Camp Johnson, which is named after Hashmark Johnson. So I'm dedicating the show today once again to Edgar Huff and Hashmark Johnson. But last but definitely not leastly, I am no fan of Barack Hussein Obama. Didn't vote for him in 2008, didn't vote for him in 2012. But not since I was a child growing up in Jim Crow-ruled South Carolina have I seen so much overt racism in this country since the Negro got elected in 2008 to the White House. And I know the White House got people listening to the show today because they damn know I was going to be on here. And what I'm sharing right now, I've already sent to them. But one thing that Barack Hussein Obama did, that he will get a pass from me for the next 70 days. Mr. Nelson, back in January of 2007, I wrote an article for the Los Angeles Police Protective League's newspaper called The Thin Blue Line. Now, for those folks listening, the Los Angeles Police Protective League is like a union. We don't really have a union for LAPD, but it's the closest thing to a union LAPD has. When I wrote that article back in January of 2007, it was later published the next month for Black History Month in the magazine. In that article, I talked about a man that I definitely want to make sure everybody knows about today, and this is who I'm really dedicating the show premiere number one. And thank you, Barack Hussein Obama. William Henry Johnson. In fact, his nickname was Black Death. William Henry Black Death Johnson. Ever heard of him, Mr. Nelson?
Nope.
Yeah, I know. So when I wrote this article, I talked about the fact that he was in a National Guard unit. And for you folks out there who are more modern history, in much later years, Colin Powell was a member of this unit. So anyway, the 369th Regiment was an all-black New York City National Guard unit. World War I started up. They were sent down to Spartanburg, South Carolina. You know, Mr. Nelson, the same county where they're finding all those bodies on this guy's property right now. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I've seen that story, yeah.
Yeah, Spartanburg County, a place that I don't go to because I know all about the Klan, even though I got some girlfriends there from college. But, you know, most of my girlfriends in college were relatives of Klan members in South Carolina. They sent them to Spartanburg, of all places. Those guys were getting killed while being trained because they're down in anti-nigger land, Klan country. Oh, and when they got trained with broomsticks. While white boys were getting trained with actual weapons, these guys were being trained with broomsticks, Mr. Nelson, to go fight in World War I. Put them on a ship, the worst ship in the planet. The ship twice had to return to New York Harbor. It broke down the third time. These guys said, hey, we're going to fix the ship ourselves, and they made it over to Europe. I wish I was making this stuff up, okay? So when they finally got into the war, Mr. Nelson, and they had to fight against the Germans, there were two members of the unit, Corporal and Private Needham Roberts. They were put out in this, what we call an OP, observation post. They got overrun by something like 30 Germans. Needham was so badly wounded, Johnson ran out of bullets. Johnson took him out, Mr. Nelson, with his knife and bayonet. Now, in World War I, no blacks were awarded the Medal of Honor. None. That has changed since. And I have to say, you know, George Herbert Walker Bush, Daddy Bush, he and I were always, well, I was always closer to Daddy Bush than any other president, even though I will say Bill Clinton's administration gave me access to stuff that no other president did. But Daddy Bush did award a Medal of Honor to one gentleman from South Carolina, also coincident from South Carolina named Storrs, for what he did in World War I. Well, I've been fighting since I published that article in the Blue Line for LAPD back in 2007. I, along with other folks, have been demanding some kind of recognition for the Harlem Hellfighters. So for all you folks out there who like to Google or like to do web search, Henry Johnson was a member of the Harlem Hellfighters. Now, Mr. Nelson, it was so racist. When they fought in World War I, they were not even allowed to carry a U.S. flag. They fought in World War I under the state of New York's flag. Now, these gentlemen who did get awarded over there, some of them the highest award possible, got them from France. Black folks get more recognition for what they've done over in Europe for this country from France and other European countries than they get from here. Finally, Mr. Nelson, last year, I'm happy to say that President Barack Hussein Obama awarded the Medal of Honor to Corporal Henry Johnson. Sadly, there is not even one single surviving relative from his family bloodline that we could find. So somebody from the National Guard unit accepted the award in his past, and on his behalf. So I just want to say, for all those out there who know how I've been fighting for recognition for the Montford Point Marines for years, and Mr. Nelson be the first one to tell you, he never even heard of the Montford Point Marines until I started doing radio shows with him. I'm glad to say that, I finally received a letter from a general thanking me for all the help. Guys like Larry Elder who talk all his smack, I only give him a pass because his father was a Montford Point Marine. But it was folks as myself who risked our military careers. And I don't give a damn. You got to have some principles, folks. That's why you shouldn't be voting for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. It was worth risking my military career to fight for people like Corporal Johnston in the U.S. Army National Guard, or for all those blacks who fought during World War II in the Montford Point Marines that Clint Eastwood didn't even have the decency to include any of when he did his World War II movie. Even though blacks came on his movie set before they even started filming saying, aren't you going to include any blacks? This is the Pacific Campaign. Because you folks look in newspapers and magazines, and all you see from Iwo Jima is a bunch of white boys. And there were lots of blacks who died, Marines who died in the Pacific Campaign. So when you all out there on the front lines want to cry because Hillary Clinton didn't get elected, did Hillary Clinton teach you anything that I'm telling you today? Get your heads out your asses and learn about yourselves first before you start worrying about somebody who doesn't even look as you and doesn't really give a damn about you. Because that's what this show is about today. I'm a retired Marine Corps officer because of the sacrifices of people who, before me, went out there and gave their lives so you folks could be able to argue about whether we should have affirmative action or not. And you don't even know their names. You don't know their history, but you can tell me all about a Hillary Clinton because you think you know about a Hillary Clinton. You can tell me about a Hillary Clinton or a Donald Trump and don't even know your own damn history. And that's a shame. Okay, Mr. Nelson, I'm going to step off my soapbox now.
All right. We're coming up on a break real soon. But before we go to the calls, though, this election that we saw, selection, if you will, that we saw today on Tuesday, could it have been? Could Hillary have gotten more of the electoral votes? Could they have been playing around with the computers? Could they have gotten into that?
Yeah, you just love putting me on the fire. Hey, by the way, was Dick Gregory on yesterday?
Yeah, Greg was here.
Damn. Well, see, Mr. Nelson, you got a guy who was just the president-elect, and he doesn't believe in global warming, climate change, whatever you call it. As I'm talking to you, I just took off another T-shirt. Why? You know how hot it is right now here, Mr. Nelson?
It's probably in the 90s.
There it is. It's almost Thanksgiving, and it's 86 degrees on the beach at Venice Beach. But we don't have any climate change. So now you're going to put a knucklehead in the White House who got elected because he was elected by people, many of them, who think climate change is all a hoax. Because many of them are sharp as a bowling ball. And that's who they want in the White House. So when you talk about...
All right, hold that thought right there. We got to take this quick break. We got to check the traffic and weather in the DMV. 800-450-7876. You can speak to Mark from Anaheim. We'll take your calls after the traffic and weather update on 1450. WOL, where information is power. 800-450-7876 to speak to Mark. I'm going to let Mark finish up his response that was interrupted by the traffic and weather update. Mark?
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I'm going to answer your question real quick here, Mr. Nelson. I need to go back to the Harlem Hellfighters. Since I got all these Marines today who are calling in, and I'm a Mustang, by the way, for those who don't know, in the Navy and Marine Corps, if you were prior enlisted and become a commissioned officer, you're called a Mustang. So I love the Marine Corps. And once again, I'm not going to lie to you folks. So, Mr. Nelson, I told you about how the Harlem Hellfighters, they left their National Guard unit, went down to South Carolina for training and incurred a lot of racism. Do you know who they got the most racism from of all, though? United States Marines. Now, I started this show today by saying, happy birthday, Devil Dogs. Devil dogs is a term of affection that supposedly were given to Marines by World War I Germans in Belleau Wood, because the Marines fought so fiercely that they seemed like they were dogs coming straight out of hell. Let me just tell you folks something. Before that great fight with Marines in Belleau Woods, Mr. Nelson, you know who was killing the Germans?
I have no idea.
The Harlem Hellfighters. But guess who else they had to kill, Mr. Nelson? United States Marines. Because the white Marines in the Marine Corps were so racist, they were sneaking in to the Harlem Hellfighters lines and killing Marines. Killing Black Army National Guards from New York, Harlem Hellfighters. So for every one Harlem Hellfighter that was found killed, they'd go out and kill 3 to 5 U.S. Marines. These are the guys who were supposed to be the badasses. The Harlem Hellfighters kicked their ass. In fact, the Commandant of the Marine Corps and General Pershing from the Army said, these niggers are so bloodthirsty, we need to get them out of here. Go put them on the front lines. And that's when guys like Johnson did what they did. And for Johnson to finally be awarded his Medal of Honor last year. See, that's the kind of history you folks don't know. And I'm a Marine Corps retired Mustang officer. And most Marines don't know that. And by the way, that whole term, devil dog, Belleau Woods, I've really found no evidence to even prove that the Germans ever said that about us. But, once they said who wins the war gets to write the history books. So, if they want to say we were called devil dogs, fine. But the Harlem Hellfighters had to kick a whole lot of Marines and kill a whole lot of fellow United States citizens while they're serving over there in Europe. And that's history you don't know, because I don't tell his story, I tell history. Now, to answer your question, Mr. Nelson, because I know what you're alluding to, you're basically alluding to the vote scam. I came on your show in 1992. I crack up because last week George Norrie on Coast to Coast had a guest on, and they were bragging about how for the last 14 years they've been talking about election fraud and voter fraud. Well, actually, they didn't even say election fraud. They said voter fraud. And I'm cracking up. I'm like, okay, let's see, 14 years. That would be, 19. No, that's 2002. Well, gee, Mr. Nelson, you and I were talking about election fraud and voter fraud in 1992, so I was doing it 24 years ago. So how the hell can George Norrie and his guests brag about being the first ones on radio show talking about voter fraud? And I came on to show you because 1992 was an election year. President Bush, of course, the daddy Bush, was running for re-election. And I came on your show and started telling you folks how politics really works. And I told you folks, whoever has the most royal blood will win. I came on your show and told your listeners how Daddy Bush, Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot were not only related by blood, but their families come from the same small town in England. The next day, what does the L.A. Times print? Oh, Bill Clinton has more royal blood. Blah, blah. And then, of course, when Bill Clinton ran against Bob Dole, I came back and told you all the same thing. Bob Dole could not be president. He lost most of his right hand in World War II, unfortunately, which means he can't shake hands with world leaders, which is a sign of weakness. And Bill Clinton had more royal blood than Bob Dole. So I challenge your listeners out there. You don't think Bill Clinton's wife, Hillary, is related to Donald Trump? Oh, you guys are idiots. But in 1992, Mr. Nelson, something else that I talked about was vote scam. I didn't use that term at the time, but I said we don't really have voter fraud. We have election fraud. There's very little voter fraud. But as Stalin once said, it matters not how they count their vote. It matters not how they cast their vote. All that matters is how it's been counted. And that's what you got going on in this country. So when Donald Trump came out with they're rigging the election, folks, that's a projection. When you hear Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, guys like Donald Trump use the word they, replace the word with we. And so, Mr. Nelson, when I came on your show, you had a lot of listeners call me paranoid, conspiratorial. That same year, brothers, Charles Collier, Kenneth Collier came out with the book called Vote Scam. So it's kind of ironic because you know who kind of passed away last week very quietly? Nobody talked about it? Janet Reno. And Janet Reno was the state attorney general for Florida when the Collier brothers brought that book out. They brought all the evidence to her about the elections being rigged in Florida, and her answer was, You're absolutely correct. However, statute of limitations is up. We're not going to do anything about it. And that's why I was very enraged when Bill Clinton later on selected Janet Reno for Attorney General. As far as Attorney Generals go, the only person I despised more as Attorney General in my lifetime was Ed Meese. So I love when guys like right-wing Mark Levin come on talking his crap about how Eric Holder and, Loretta Lynch are so corrupt. I have no love for those boule folks, but trust me, Mark Levin, he was the speechwriter for Ed Meese. Ed Meese was the most corrupt Attorney General. By the way, Reagan years. So, Donald Trump, they come up comparing Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan. For you people too young to remember, and for the rest of you too dumb to choose to remember, most of the people in Reagan's first administration were either indicted, resigned in lieu of, or got fired because of scandals before his first term was up. Same thing's going to happen with Donald Trump, by the way, because I already see the people he's surrounding himself with. They're all criminals. Seriously. So while they're sitting here talking this crap about voting to get the established Republicans out of office, they're lying to you because they just put all the established Republicans back in office who are now controlling the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. There's no significant change in policy, just like Carol Quigley said. So to answer your question, Mr. Nelson, I will just say this. In every election long before my time on this planet, there has been election fraud. Always has been. And now with the computers, and now that the League of Women Voters are not even involved with it anymore, it's a lot easier. Now, what state, Mr. Nelson, theoretically, no Republican becomes president without winning this state? What state is that, Mr. Nelson?
Ohio.
And who owns the voting machines in Ohio? Mitt Romney's son. I'm sorry, folks. Come on the radio and say I'm lying to you. So while Alex Jones will talk his crap about Soros owns the voting, they are lying to you. They own the damn voting machines that are controlling this election. They've already gotten much of the laws that were bled for, died for by black folks and white folks during the Civil Rights Movement. They got laws that were taken off the books by the U.S. Supreme Court, Republican-led Supreme Court, that took those laws off the books down in Mississippi, making it easier for them to restrict blacks from voting or to intimidate blacks from voting this year. But they didn't really need that because who did the Democratic Party pick? Hillary Clinton. And there are enough black folks as myself out there who would never vote for Hillary Clinton. So we either had a choice. Vote for somebody else other than Hillary Clinton or not vote at all. So while you folks are patting yourselves on the back because Donald Trump has supposedly got elected and those are crying because Hillary didn't, let me remind you, 46.9% of all eligible voters in this country did not vote because they're fed up with the system. And as myself, I stopped voting for the lesser of two evils in 1992. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, a bunch of folks been holding for you, Mark. 800-450-7876. Let's go to line 5. Terry's calling us from Columbus, Ohio. Terry, you have a question for Mark?
Speak of the devil, Ohio.
What's going on, Mark?
How you doing, sir?
Man, Mark, I just want to thank you, man. Just first of all, for your service. Thank you. Anytime I send you a question on Facebook, you always answer it. So I just want to thank you for helping me become a better person and become more educated. My question for you is...
Before you say your question, you need to get in touch with Mr. Nelson because Mr. Nelson, what this gentleman is not telling you, he himself should be a guest on your show. You wouldn't believe the things this gentleman has done. And before you give us a question, just tell me, how are you involved with the music industry?
Yeah, I've been doing music for about 5-6 years, independent music. So I have a couple projects that I've done, and I'm finishing up a project now. And a lot of information that I've got from you, Dick Gregory, a lot of that stuff has really kind of reignited something in me to start back recording music.
And see, Mr. Nelson, this gentleman, his family, a lot of history, law enforcement, armed forces, a lot of history in his family. So sometimes when your listeners call in, they're very modest. But see, I do my own research too, and I find out some of your listeners, Mr. Nelson, they are some unbelievably gifted people, and Terry right now is one of them. But I know he's modest, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I am going to give him a hard time about one thing, because he also comes from an evangelical background, and you got to love those evangelicals who are out there supporting this rapist, gambling, misogynist, bigoted Donald Trump. Let's go ahead, brother. Tell me your question.
That's right. Yeah, I'm very disappointed, man. I mean, you just look at some of the stuff that these pastors are writing on Facebook. It's ridiculous. But my question for you is, like, with the executive orders that Obama and Bush has already passed, what do you see, you know, if Trump is that dictator, or if the dictator is coming in 2020, what are some of the things you think that could come down the pipeline, you know, as far as stuff that he's going to do?
Okay. Well, for one, you won't see me or hear me doing radio shows like this anymore, because even as I'm doing this show today, I'm skating on thin ice, because the reason I stopped doing shows with Mr. Nelson back in 2001, because that's when they passed the Patriot Act. And you don't have to be, you just have to merely be accused of. So if I'm accused of being a domestic terrorist, I could be at Guantanamo Bay right now. No lawyer, no family, no habeas corpus. Those laws are already on the books. And those laws got extended and magnified under Barack Hussein Obama when the 10-year period was up. So in 2011, they didn't take those laws off the books. They increased the powers of the president. We have no rights. And I firmly see this country leading to a day where right now you have right-wing radio controls all political talk on AM station. I live in L.A., which is second only to New York City as the largest media capital in the world. There is no radio station on AM anywhere around here that is not right-wing when it comes to political talk. So old white folks, this is all they're hearing. And if I'm living in L.A. and it's like this, God knows it's worse in places like my home of South Carolina or down in Florida. And I know because I coach surfers. There'll be a few surfers who I won't have anything to do with anymore, and it's not because of them, but because of the sins of their mothers and fathers who were so stupid enough to be so blatantly racist in their Facebook comments this year. So you keep your friends close, you keep your enemies closer. And that's why
hang on a second, Mark. We got to take another break. We're reaching out to the top of the hour. Terry, I thank you for your call, and thank you for being so patient. 800-450-7876. Get you want to speak to Mark from Anaheim. Take your calls after the short break on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Well, thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. You know Mark. That's not his real name. He's really not from Anaheim. But anyway, Mark, I'm going to let you finish up with your response to Terry's question. Yeah,
so Terry wants to know what's in the future. But I have to go back in the past to let you know what I'm talking about here. Basically, with Terry's question, if these executive orders are already in the book, what's the future going to look like? And I'll just tell you this, for example. There is no Bill of Rights in this country. There is no U.S. Constitution. And if anybody who thinks there is, then how can you justify us holding those folks at Guantanamo Bay? See, nobody cares because right now those are considered Muslims. We don't care about them. But what they've done to those so-called Muslims, they can do to any U.S. citizen. And when President Obama got reelected in 2012, less than 48 hours after his reelection, more than 75,000 idiots went online and signed a webline petition stating that they wanted to secede from the United States. You just identified yourself as a traitor to this country. Mr. Nelson, do you know what's going on right now here in California as I'm talking to you?
No idea.
These folks who saw Donald Trump get to be the president-elect are now calling for California to secede from the United States. I am not making this up. They are publicly identifying themselves as being traitors to the United States. So going back to what I was saying before the break, I coach a lot of surfers. Most of my surfers are not from this country. Why? Because most surfers in this country, their families and themselves, well, not the children, their families are so damn racist, they can't even conceive a black guy helping them. So I coach surfers from other countries who beat their ass all day long. Seriously. And I enjoy doing it. Some of them are catching on now. But it's too late because I watched and read all their Facebook postings this year. Don't say anything to them because I want to stay close to my enemy. So when they come reaching out next year, I'm like, I don't have time for you. And here's the thing, Mr. Nelson. None of my foreign surfers ever exude this kind of attitude. In fact, they're all saying, what the hell is wrong with your country? How could your country pick Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump? So while I'm talking about suicide hotlines over here, Mr. Nelson, over in Europe, they are going ballistic. 6 months ago, I could travel to Great Britain and the U.S. dollar would have done very well against the British pound. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, it's just the opposite because of Donald Trump being named as the president-elect. And it's sad because I have servers from around the world who say, I don't know what the hell your country is doing. But you know who's responsible for this really, Mr. Nelson? Two colored folks. Because I've already told you there's no U.S. Constitution, no Bill of Rights. I know the Alex Jones types and others, they still think they're fighting for the, Constitution. And they basically ran Hillary Clinton this year as the so-called globalist neoconservative and Donald Trump as the birther, nationalistic, fight the New World Order candidate. That's what you basically had, Mr. Nelson. Yeah. So when I tell you there's a civil war coming, the civil war already started. They put the two candidates up as the civil war candidates. Globalism versus nationalism. If you really listen to Donald Trump's rhetoric, he's against TPP, which Barack Obama wants to fast track, and Hillary Clinton lies about. She claims now just to get the Bernie Sanders, try to get the Bernie Sanders supporters, claiming that she doesn't support it when she damn sure endorsed it. So you have the globalists versus the nationalists. And remember, Hitler was a nationalist. You know who created that whole thing for Hillary Clinton, Mr. Nelson? A colored boy, a Boule boy. Why do I say that? The U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights has been null and void since 1945, folks. I know you live in the past. I know you want to live on your dreams. I know you want to still hang on to something that doesn't exist. But right here in California at the Bohemian Grove in San Francisco, every country sent a world leader. Russia was the only exception, which, by the way, is why Russia now is in bed with, Alex Jones and Donald Trump and General Flynn and Jill Stein. Yeah, you Google those damn names. Jill Stein and Flynn, who's Trump's right-hand man and general, having lunch and dinner with Putin. And where did Trump's daughter just come back from? Oh, I'm sorry, on a sailboat with Putin's daughter? You guys are idiots. But in 1945, world leaders came to Bohemian Grove, were served food by U.S. Army personnel. That's when they created the United Nations. And you know who planned that whole thing, Mr. Nelson?
Who?
A colored boy, a house Negro Boule. Now, you folks out there know this name because he was the first black to ever receive the Nobel Peace Prize, which, by the way, Barack Obama got one before he started killing all those colored folks in Africa. But I digress. He also was known as a well-known civil rights leader, marched many times with Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy. That's how you know this man. His name was Ralph Bunche. But that same Ralph Bunche, because most of my mentors were World War II Nazis and Office of Strategic Services old boys, Ralph Bunche in World War II was OSS, Mr. Nelson. OSS later on became CIA. Ralph Bunche, after World War II, worked behind the scenes, and he was the one who did all the background planning for the first ever meeting of Bohemian Grove in San Francisco, California. Now, every president since Calvin Coolidge has been a member of the Bohemian Grove. David Gergen was a member. I came on your show back in 1993 and told your listeners about David Gergen because Bill Clinton was going to appoint him to his White House. And Gergen was a member of Bohemian Grove, which was an all-male club. So all these feminists jumped all over Hillary Clinton saying, how are you going to bring somebody on your staff who belongs to an all-man club? So Gergen resigned from the Bohemian Grove. By the way, Gergen and Hillary Clinton are related by blood. I could do this all day long. Seriously. Nobody messes with Bohemian Grove. And Mr. Nelson, I mentioned earlier about the National Guard, and I mentioned about a more recent person who was a member of the National Guard unit, Colin Powell. He's a member of Bohemian Grove. In fact, thanks to Anthony Weiner, since you folks really don't know what's going on with the Russians. Snowden is a traitor. I would not shoot him on sight. I would waterbird him first and then shoot him. Assange, I would shoot on sight. Snowden, Assange, they're all working with the Russians. Jill Stein, Russians. Trump.
Let me interrupt you there, since you said Snowden.
You want to hear this before you ask the question. Jill Stein, Russians. WikiLeaks, Russians. Anthony Weiner, like an idiot, because of his websites, folks, that's how WikiLeaks got the emails that have been destroying Hillary Clinton's campaign all year. And Comey's a liar because the FBI has known about this for months. And Comey purposely came out 10 days before the election just to make sure they put a nail in coffin for Hillary not to make it by suggesting that they were reopening the investigation against Hillary when they know damn well they had already seen all those emails months ago. And Anthony Weiner, like I said before, you should just take your knife and kill yourself. Because after 30 years of going after the Clintons with Vince Foster, Mena, Arkansas, cocaine deals, Ron Brown, all kinds of scandals, what brought Hillary down? Her second daughter, Hoomer Abedin, not divorcing her dumbass husband, who keeps sexting girls on the internet. That's how they got the WikiLeaks, folks. Are you hearing this on liberal radio? Are you hearing this on right-wing radio? And you won't be hearing this from me once Donald Trump swears in. But I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson. What was your question?
I was going to tell you, Brother Jamal was watching Russian TV, and they were interviewing Snowden.
Of course.
And said Snowden was talking about, says the federal government, the U.S. government has a bunch of spies in the press corps.
Snowden should have been executed years ago because Snowden is not a CIA or NSA. He was a private contractor. As much as 60% of all intelligence gathered by this country today is by private contractors who are not loyal to the U.S. government. They're loyal to the private corporations who want to make a profit. Donald Trump is representing the folks in this country who want to privatize all government agencies for a profit. And when you need to make a profit every year, you will create intelligence to justify military actions, which will still give your stockholders a profit. Corporate fascism, that's what we're talking about. I don't think the Democratic Party is not a part of it. They're just doing it at a much slower rate. That's why Hillary Clinton lost the election. She's disenfranchised blacks, and more importantly, she's disenfranchised all the white folks. Now, they grew up in Arkansas, okay, and moved to New York to be closer to Wall Street, leaving behind the white blue-collar workers. So whites and blacks and browns in the South and the so-called Rust states have felt abandoned by the Clintons. They didn't necessarily vote for Donald Trump, except in places that really counted, like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, where those union jobs are gone. They know damn well those jobs aren't coming back. But at least Trump went out there and made them feel as if he really cared, even if he was lying to them. Hillary, let's take Wisconsin, for example. When's the last time Hillary went to Wisconsin, Mr. Nelson?
I have no idea.
Before the Democratic National Convention. You think they might feel a little slighted? That's what happened with Tom Brady. I get so sick of knucklehead idiots who gets radio shows because of who their daddy is. But you get somebody like a Meghan McCain who repeats this lie. Folks, this is a lie. The Bradley effect is a lie. Bradley did not lose the election for governor of California because white folks lied and said they were going to vote for him, but after he came out on gun control, they voted against him. That's a lie. Bradley lost the election here in California because he just assumed he had the colored folks.
Right. Hold that thought right there. We got to take our last look at the traffic and weather in the DMV. 800-450-7876. Get your mark from Anaheim. Your call's next on 1450. WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. 800-450-7876. Speak to Mark from Anaheim. Mark, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying before we left for the break.
Yeah, so I know, this is always the fastest 2 hours in radio. So, folks, earlier I talked about the Harlem Hellfighters. The only documentary I was ever able to find on them is a documentary called Men in Bronze, just like the color bronze, B-R-O-N-Z-E, Men in Bronze. Now, I don't even know if that's out on DVD. I hope it is. Maybe I have to go check because I got mine with a VHS a long time ago. But it's got actual footage of them from places like South Carolina, World War I, and then their march parades later years. I don't think there's anybody still alive today who was featured in that tape. It'll bring you to tears when you see what those guys did for this country, what they went through, and received no recognition. Men in bronze. Also, Mr. Nelson, others asked me about the possibility of the elections being rigged. There's a big difference between voter fraud and election fraud. I did a show with Mr. Nelson back in 1992. Right after I did that show, Kenneth Collier and his brother Charles Collier, who both had interesting deaths, they wrote a book called Vote Scam. One word, Vote Scam, The Stealing of America. Now, of course, the technology today is even far greater than when they wrote that book back in 1992. They do have a website out there if you Google Vote Scam because the daughter of one of the brothers is still out there doing the fight. And recently, Mr. Nelson, Greg Palast has come out with a movie called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and it's based on a book by the same name, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And Greg Palast goes into great detail, and he specifically said, as he promoted his documentary about 6 weeks ago, Donald Trump says the elections are rigged. He should know because they are rigging it. So I hope that answered your earlier question. The best democracy money can buy. Now, to go back to what we were just talking about, I earlier stated that House Negro Boule was responsible for helping to put Hillary Clinton where she is because, Mr. Nelson, Bohemian Grove loves Hillary. You know who they despise?
Who?
Donald Trump. And you know how I know that? Because thanks to the Wikileaks, one of Colin Powell's emails revealed how the Bohemian Grove despised Donald Trump. Anyway, but there's a Negro also responsible for Donald Trump. You know who that is?
No idea.
Well, Mr. Nelson, who were we told that the state of Maryland went for?
I don't recall.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump got the state of Maryland and all those electoral college votes. So since you Maryland folks are listening today, and he probably might be listening himself because he knows I can't stand him, House Negro Boule Michael Steele is the one that brought the John Birch Society back into the Republican National Convention back in 2009. What you see in this campaign this year, folks, is the Donald Trump who is representing the John Birch Society, the Nazi Party, the far right-wing fringe of this country, who has never wanted to be a part of the United Nations. So in this campaign, what you were presented with was a white female who thought she should be president in 2008, but my fellow Charlestonian James Clyburn and others says, nope, this is the Negro's time. You wait. Who went up against the John Birch Society's candidate and the kind of person who's despised by the Bohemian Grove. This was nothing more than a nationalist candidate versus the globalist candidate. That's what you were force-fed to decide on. And I challenge anybody to please come on this show and tell me that I'm lying to you. Michael Steele, no white guy could have ever brought the John Birch Society back into that main fold of the Republican National Convention. So they used the House Negro. As soon as they were done with him, they booted his ass out. Now he's doing radio shows on satellite radio. They didn't need him anymore. Same thing with Barack Obama. Used the House Negro to go kill lots of folks over in Libya and Africa and, all these other countries that you guys think are Middle East but are African countries, with Hillary Clinton as a State Department official. That's why Hillary, going back to the Meghan McCain and these knuckleheads think they sound so sophisticated when they bring a Mo Kelly on and go, oh, well, do you think this is another example of the Bradley effect? Is that why Donald Trump got all those votes? Because the pollsters said that Hillary was winning, but it seems like Donald Trump got it. Listen, folks, there is no Bradley effect. Bradley didn't win the governorship in California for the same reason Hillary Clinton didn't. Hillary Clinton didn't campaign in those states where white folks who lost their jobs, blue-collar, middle-class, working-class white folks felt abandoned by Hillary Clinton. When Bradley ran for governor of California, he was on his fourth term as mayor of L.A. after being with LAPD. Now, he ran against Sam Yorty because he said no mayor should be mayor for 3 terms, and he was mayor for 4. Didn't do very little for the black community. All his damn focus was on the white Jews in West L.A. When he ran for governor, he didn't spend any time campaigning in the black communities because he assumed he had the black vote. Black folks didn't vote against him. They just didn't vote at all. That's what you saw in this election. You had the Jill Stein folks pulling votes away from Hillary. You had the Bernie Sanders folks, especially in California, who are pissed off, and I know because I spent the whole damn day with them down in Wilmington when they were having their union parade. And these folks are not happy with Hillary Clinton, especially because they know the Democratic National Convention stole the election from Bernie Sanders here in California. Those folks aren't going to vote for Hillary. They're either not going to vote at all or they're going to vote for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders were saying some of the same things when it comes to talking about the working man and woman in this country. Hillary Clinton represents Wall Street. Barack Obama talked a good game, but represents Wall Street. Didn't go after one damn person who destroyed this country financially in 2007, 2008. First words out of Barack Hussein Obama's mouth, we need to look forward, not look backwards. Ronald Reagan convicted hundreds of damn people involved in the savings and loan scandal and banking scandals. Barack Hussein Obama, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, not one damn banker went anywhere. A few people got fines, please. They had more interest in the bank than the money they paid out in those fines, because he's Wall Street. So this is who you got, folks. Ted Cruz, wife works for Goldman Sachs. Donald Trump, see who his finance campaign manager is. Goldman Sachs. Gee, Barack Obama, Goldman Sachs. Hillary Clinton, Goldman Sachs. Wake the hell up, folks. Merrill Lynch ran this country when I first got into politics. From the 70s through the 80s, it was Merrill Lynch. We're bullish on America. Since the 90s, it's been Goldman Sachs. That's who decides who's going to be your president. Meanwhile, you got a guy who's involved with the mob, gambling casinos. Wall Street's gambling all your damn money away. They were gambling on who's going to be the president. Just look it up. You can look up terms like election betting and see what you come up with. That's where the pollsters were getting their numbers from on Hillary Clinton winning, because they were using the exact numbers used by the odds makers out of places like Vegas on who was going to win, based on nothing except a guess or an assumption or a hunch. Seriously, I wish I was making this up. Now you got Mike Pence. He calls himself an evangelical. Mike Pence is from Indiana. First of all, they passed a law where they can shoot cops if they feel their constitutional rights are violated. But Mike Pence is an evangelical. You Google it for yourself and see how much millions of dollars Mike Pence and the Republicans in Indiana have taken from the gambling casino industry. You guys have allowed a guy who represents the gambling casino industry to now represent this country. Why do you think Donald Trump went bankrupt 3 times or 4 times? Because he's a gambler. And he's going to gamble your damn way with the United States government now, because we are closer to war than ever before with Russia. That's why Putin's happy that Donald Trump's in bed with him, because now Putin can take a sigh of relief. Hillary Clinton, she wants a no-fly zone. How the hell are you going to have a no-fly zone in Syria when the Russians have 2 naval bases in Syria? One of their airplanes go through the no-fly space, and then we shoot it down, and your neoconservatives who've been trying for the last 15 years to get Syria and Iraq as the 7 countries that they haven't controlled yet under their wing, you got your World War III. As I'm speaking to you right now, Philippines, they're like, hey, I think I'm going to get in bed with BRICS. I told you all about BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Obama ran down to Cuba real fast, opened negotiations, because Cuba was going to join BRICS. The guy in the Philippines is killing people with impunity, and you don't hear about it because he says, anybody who's involved with drugs, I'm going to kill him. Guess what? He wants to get in bed with China and BRICS. We don't get those naval bases in the Philippines, the United States is going to be screwed. We got our Marine Corps base in Australia, but we don't have much of a projection now in that Asian area that we had before. If China is supposed to go after Vietnam, or with BRICS, China and Russia come together to go up against the U.S. Navy. So while you folks are being distracted with all this crap about who's sleeping with who, Bill Clinton flew on, come on, Google this one, Lolita Express, and so did Donald Trump. It didn't matter who you got in the White House. They're both pedophiles, rapists, evil, Luciferians, mob-infested, and you guys are fighting over it and calling suicide hotlines over these two people that they selected and gave to you as your candidates for president. I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson, did that answer the question?
Stand by, 800-450-7876. Take a quick break, and then we'll take some calls for you right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. Gina's been holding for a while. Gina, you still with us on line 6? I think Gina's gone. All right, line 4, Cleve's been holding for a while as well. Cleve in Los Angeles?
Give thanks and respect. Brother Mark, I have a question for you. When you say these people are caught up in something that's not even of them, it's not part of theirs, this is not your country. Negro people, not black people, Negroes, a race of Negroes. According to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, we don't permanently have the right to vote in this country. So
That's
you're
correct.
getting all upset. That's true.
That's correct.
This is correct. Each amendment coincides with an impending expiration of
Correct.
some or all of the Act's special provisions. They voted on it in 1970. That's 5 years after the thing was first enacted. They voted on it again in 1975. People weren't paying attention to the fact that right after Barack Obama got elected, they went in Congress and voted on re-giving us the right to vote in this country. Black people, Negro people, what in the hell what are you doing?
But I take this one step. Hey, guess what, brother? But let me tell you something. White folks, you ain't on the list either. There is nothing in the original U.S. Constitution that gives any of us the right to vote, because the only people that mattered was rich white property owner men.
Amen, brother.
I'm just telling it the way it is.
Cleve, do us a favor and put in a question for him. We've got a bunch of folks been holding for a while like yourself, so put in a question for him so he can respond.
Okay. Tell me, why do black people still go around trying to be white people? Black women still wear imitation white girl hair. I saw a black man on TV the other day. He had on a plaid suit, a checkered shirt, and a red polka dot tie, trying to be white. And this is not our country. How can it be? It wasn't set up by us. It cannot be set up for us. Your comments.
Well, Mr. Nelson, this will be a fast response because the brother has already answered his own question. And this is, no, seriously, I'm just going to tell you, we have been manipulated by a media control system that a long time ago learned to teach people to want something that they don't really need. It's called marketing. Marketing is used in politics. Marketing is used to support candidates. Marketing, of course, is used to advertise in television and radio. But you have to be led to believe that you need something that you really don't need, but more importantly, that you can't live without it. I've never had a smartphone, never had an iPad, never had an iPhone, never had satellite TV, don't have cable since 1989, and yet folks are coming to me for information. They got all this technology they're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on every year. I don't need it. I don't want it. But we live in a society today where, unfortunately, most people have been brought up, but they got to have it. They got to have it. So the brother basically answered his own question. So let's take another call, sir.
All right, let's try Gina one more time in Charlotte on line 4. Gina?
Damn.
Hey, good day, good day.
Damn, Gina, I pray for you because I know North Carolina. And by the way, Mr. Nelson, I'll just tell you, North Carolina is another one of those states where there was a very interesting switch in the voting result. But I'm sorry, Gina.
Yes, it was. You know, I'm in Mecklenburg County. This was the only county.
Oh, my God. Whoa. Mr. Nelson, she's in the Charlotte, Mecklenburg area. Most folks don't even know that Charlotte is named after a nigger. But I'm sorry, sister, go ahead.
Yep, that's it. hey, look, Mecklenburg County was the only county in North Carolina that did not vote for Trump, but I didn't vote for none of them because I know what the sideshow is about. But I wanted to ask you this, Mark, and thank you, Mr. Nelson, and I just wanted to quickly say, Mr. Nelson, don't get so uptight when people say the word church. You kind of did that to me last time. When I said the word church, you went off, and it wasn't even really about that. But just calm down. It's going to be all right. We know they don't have no power. But I wanted to say the Constitution, wasn't it the Constitution that said that we as black folks were only 3/5 of a human?
No, but I will address that for you if you want me, sister.
Okay, yes. From the standpoint of if we're 3/5, how are we even able to vote?
Right. Okay, what happened was this. Before the last Civil War, and we're going to have another Civil War. Now, Gina, are you still there?
Yeah.
You're a very astute sister. I already know this. So I have a question for you. If you have a large population of people in this country and there are no jobs, what would you do with them?
Get rid of them.
There you go. You hear that, Mr. Nelson? Okay, and that's what we got in this country right now. That's what all wars are about, reducing the population. You can come up with all your political excuses and reasons. It's always about making money and reducing the population. We have a large population of people in this country right now with no jobs, and right now here in L.A., I got machines making pizzas. Wendy's is now switching over to all machines and getting rid of their teenage employees. That's the reality. So Donald Trump can talk all the crap he wants. He can't bring the jobs back because they've been replaced by automation. We are leaving from the industrial age to the technological age, and man's labor is no longer required. So when Gina asked the question about 3/5 of a person, that came about because during slavery, when we were leaving from the agricultural age to the industrial age, Southern people got sick and tired of the Northern folks always dominating the U.S. government. And they go, well, hell, we got more representation than you. Well, why do you have that? Because we have more people than you. No, you don't. What are you talking about? We got niggers. No. Niggers don't count. So the compromise was, especially in the southern states, when it comes to the House of Representatives, for every black person that existed, that person would count as 3/5 of a person based on the able to be represented in the House of Representatives. The second compromise was they created a new section of government called the U.S. Senate. Regardless of your population, each state would be represented by 2 U.S. senators. The United States Senate was created because of slaves. That's where the 3/5 of a person comes from. So
wow.
I hope that, yes.
Oh, wow. That's great. And I got one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the definition of insanity?
Me coming on this radio show, keep thinking people are listening to me and they're not.
No, I love you. And I wanted to say is we, the American people, just because of the fact that we participate in this guy's show, they already know how easily we can be manipulated and controlled just because we believe we make a difference.
Exactly.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sis.
Thank you, Gina. 800-450-7876, line 5. Ail's calling us from Arkansas. Ail, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, Carl, you know how to bring it.
Oh, hey, brother, okay. how you let Bubba Clinton abandon you guys, man? And guess what? And Hillary did not even get the Arkansas state this year.
Hey, let me say this: Happy birthday, Leatherneck.
Thank you, sir. Double dog. Happy. Thank you.
Listen, man. Listen, I have rumors that Mark Zuckerberg and Snowden are cousins and they're 4th-generation Rockefellers. What you think?
I've heard that rumor, too, but I haven't been able to substantiate it, so I haven't said that on Mr. Nelson's show.
Okay, well, let me ask you this here. Donald Trump talking about leaving NATO, and that would devastate a lot of corporate control. You think that back and tagging?
Well, NATO was created because of the so-called Cold War. Donald Trump is a showman, a heister, and a con man. We are never going to give up NATO because most white folks come from Europe, and Europe is represented by NATO. So Donald Trump was saying the things he needed to say to fuel that nationalistic mentality to get the Alex Jones and all these folks to go out and support him. Now that Barack Obama has sat his butt down for the last 90 minutes in the White House, you won't hear him talking that. You won't hear him talking that crap anymore. And I should tell you, listen, when I came on the show,
get your free meal tomorrow, man.
I'm sorry.
Get your free meal tomorrow.
All right, but just remember, I told the listeners here several months ago that just because the people in Great Britain voted for Brexit didn't mean a damn thing. Mr. Nelson, so far Brexit has not passed in Great Britain, and this whole Donald Trump movement is compared to the Brexit movement. In fact, the guy who led the Brexit movement has been the one over here firing up Alex Jones and these John Birches and these low-educated white folks who really believe they're going to pull off a Brexit in this country. Brexit, while all you were distracted by Hillary Clinton, just Google Brexit did not get passed by UK and see what you come up with. Because that vote by those people was not a binding referendum.
Right. The British Supreme Court's got a rule on it.
There it is.
800-450-7876. Ayo, I thank you for your call. Let's go to line 3. Charles is calling us from the district. Charles, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
How you doing, Mark?
How you doing, sir?
My name is, yes, sir. Last time I talked to you about the NBC thing, I had to refresh your memory. I was in the Army.
Nuclear, biological, chemical warfare.
Right. And I'm going to make this real quick. You've been to D.C., you know what Fort McNair is in the Southwest, right?
Yes, sir.
You know where the Pentagon and Crystal City are. To make a long story short, we got certain people that went in Army intelligence and Navy intelligence who are traitors. And when you say that traitor thing, that pissed me off, man. I got 28 years in. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
that
sir.
really pissed me off when you told me that, and I don't like traitors. But other than that, to wake our people up is this. They need to listen to you. They need to do their homework. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to leave this place, man. You dig?
Yes, sir. Now, you're old enough to remember there was a movie called Hunt for Red October.
Yes, sir.
In that movie, Hunt for Red October, that was during the Daddy Bush years because there was a major civil war going on within the intelligence community. ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, versus Central Intelligence Agency. There's a lot I can't say about this.
CID? Remember CID?
Right, but the whole thing was CIA. The whole thing was there was allegedly...
Hang on a second, fellas. We've got to take another break here. Stay with us, Charles. I'll let you finish your question to Mark. 800-450-7876 gets you in. Your calls are next on 1450. WOL, where information is power. Let's go back to Mark from Anaheim and Charles in D.C. Mark, I'm going to let you finish up your response to Charles' question.
Well, see, Charles is...
This is real quick. The CID and all. I had some people had 3 different MOS. I'm Army, and you know what MOS means.
Yes, sir.
And,
military occupation, especially.
Right. But to make a long story short, I had some friends that went rogue. They just like that Snowden person. And they're about the money. They traitors, and they deserve what they're going to get. I can't say that on it because I respect his phone.
I understand.
But see, I'm going to get on your website to give you that information. But to make a long story short is this, man, I'm fed up with this. I want to go with Obama. I don't know what Obama had to do. I was going to go to retire in, you know where Guam is? I wanted to go to Guam, man. I don't hate being in the United States. I just want to get a break from this place. And a lot of my Army buddies that was in the war with me, they live in 7 different countries, man. I mean, can you reach...
All right, let's give him a chance to respond because we're racing the clock now, Charles. We got a bunch of folks who've been holding for quite some time.
Okay, I feel the pain of Brother Charles. Basically, this, Mr. Nelson, there was a movie called Hunt for Red October. When that movie came out, for those of us with a spook background, word was Office of Naval Intelligence was in a major war with the CIA. You have to remember, folks, back in the 90s when Daddy Bush got elected in 88, Daddy Bush was OSS and later CIA director. He was the U.S. president while in Russia, Soviet Union still at the time, until they met at the island of Malta. Gorbachev was in charge of the Soviet Union. KGB. You had the KGB and the CIA running the 2 biggest military powers in the country. Mr. Nelson, I'll just tell you this. Right now, and I feel Charles's pain. Trust me, I know the same thing. I've got passports. I can't say a lot of stuff I got. I'll just say this. Many of us who were from the spook community don't know who the players are anymore because they brought on stupid shows like 24. Jack Bauer was not CIA. He was a private contractor. They have privatized so much of intelligence today. Nobody knows who the players are, and nobody, more importantly, knows who to trust. 40 of the top national security advisors under the Republican National Convention and the Republican Party left the Republican Party for Hillary Clinton during this election. Meanwhile, you got guys like Michael Flynn. You need to find out who I'm talking about. Michael Flynn, Lieutenant General, U.S. Army, Defense Intelligence Agency, no less. This guy is drinking buddies with Putin. There is, Mr. Nelson, I wish, and I know Charles is frustrated, and I'm glad he didn't say some things I thought he was going to say. There is a major war going on within the intelligence communities in the United States right now ever since the Negro got elected, because some of these folks are so racist, they can't get past their racism, and they tried to sabotage Barack Obama. Hillary's not going to go down for emails because guys like Darrell Issa, Michelle Bachmann, and others have been purposely leaking communiques when they were in intelligence committees. They open up the can of worms to Hillary Clinton. Let me just make this simple for you folks. Hillary is not a bad woman. I have my problems with her, but when it comes to her emails, she's just an idiot, old white woman. The average age on Capitol Hill is 60 years old, old white men. If you think Hillary's emails are bad that she did inadvertently because she's so stupid about not knowing about the technological world, you have no idea what all these white old men in the Republican Party have been allowing to get hacked and leaked by Russian intelligence. That's what we're dealing with. Old white folks who don't know technology, and they use private servers. And they're trying to turn it into something. But sadly, with the propaganda out there, many within the Spook community have fallen for the lies and propaganda regarding Benghazi. Why do you think Chris Kyle is dead? Chris Kyle was training guys for the damn Civil War. I know. I was going to call him that morning before, but I had a surf contest. Didn't call him. He was dead. There are people right now who still believe that, including some of the knuckleheads who follow Alex Jones, they believe Chris Kyle was not killed by some PTSD Marine, but a Marine that was sent there to kill him to stop him from training them for this Civil War that's coming. I wish I was making this up, folks. You guys have no idea what's going on in this country. Seriously.
800-450-7876. Line 6. Jan is calling us from Greenville, North Carolina. Jan, your question for Mark.
Country.
Oh, Lord. Yes, good afternoon, and thanks for taking my call.
Yes,
you stated earlier that the presidents have royal bloodlines.
They're all related by blood, yes.
Yeah, how is Obama, where does his royal bloodline come from?
Obama's related to Dick Cheney. Obama's related to Brad Pitt, I believe. And, oh, no. In fact, what's great about the Internet, you can just Google this now. Barack Obama, royal blood, and it comes up. I mean, the great thing about this, I don't get most of my information from U.S. sources. I get it from overseas. And they have no problem printing this stuff. The Daily Mail, the UK Daily Call, this is all easy to find. And, but no, seriously, Barack Hussein Obama is directly related. And if you notice, the Bushes, they supported the Clintons during this election. Seriously. No.
Mark, isn't Colin Powell related to the Queen or something like that, I heard?
Not only that, Colin Powell, during the war, the Gulf War, was knighted by the Queen. He became a Knights of the Bath. Yeah. So was Schwarzkopf. Yeah, Colin Powell was knighted by the Queen of England. But you have to remember, his family's from Jamaica.
Oh, and yes, the other question was, is the Bible was supposed to be by King James. Are those things true, or is this just a book that was made up to control us?
Yes and no. Most of what you see in the Bible was stolen from Egyptians, black folks, and changed into Christianity. But King James was only 8 years old when that Bible was written. I believe King James, the author of the King James Bible, is the same guy who's the so-called author of the Shakespearean, Sir Francis Scott Bacon.
Okay.
And they had to change certain things in the Bible to justify misogyny by saying women had to honor their men. They had to change certain things in the Bible to say that slaves had to honor their slave owners. And, of course, guys like Nat Turner, that's where he came from, because Nat Turner was going out preaching the Bible, telling blacks, obey your slaves, until he decided to do his slave rebellion.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jan. I got a tweet question for you. Please ask your guest about the role of Roger Stone in this election, and is there any verification, I think, to the claim of Danny Williams being Bill Clinton's son?
Okay. Well, let's deal with Williams first. Go back and find a movie, Primary Colors, and you will see them talk about Williams in that movie. I will just say this. I have my suspicions about Bubba having some colored kids out there, but Williams ain't one of them. That's what I'll just say. And Alex Jones and these guys fell for that line back in the night. They've been using Alex Jones and these guys who really hate the Clintons have been using him for years. Roger Stone and Larry Nichols are two guys who have more dirt on the Clintons than you could ever imagine. The problem is their dirt is old dirt. And for whatever reason, I guess they didn't get carried along with the Clintons to the bigger land out of Arkansas, and they have an axe to grind. Much of what Roger Stone says is true. Roger Stone has been the advisor behind the scenes for Donald Trump. He's in bed with the John Birch Society, Alex Jones, and all these other folks, Breitbart, and all these, as they call it, the alt-right. Roger Stone is where they got most of the information. So most of the dirt on the Clintons came from Roger Stone and Larry Nichols. So I hope that answers the question.
Right, and somebody tweeted about alt-right, so if you can just touch on that.
Okay, alt-right is a colloquial term for the alternative right. The Republican Party is dead. The Democratic Party is dead. Bernie Sanders was not a Democratic, and that's the proper term. Democrat is not the proper term. Democrat is a condescending term used by Republicans. Donald Trump is not a Republican. What you have is the Republican Party got subverted and taken over, hijacked by the Tea Party libertarians. Initially, many of them were the populists. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party got hijacked by the progressives. Many of them are communists, atheists. The two they have in common, they hate the federal government. And the one thing they both have in common, they want to legalize drugs. Tea Party libertarians and far left-wing folks, they want to get high. They want to legalize drugs, and they don't want no government intervention. But seriously, what I'm trying to tell you is a lot of the folks who were Bernie Sanders supporters had no problem voting for a Donald Trump before a Hillary Clinton because they hate the federal government, they hate globalism, and they know Obama is part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that's like NAFTA on steroids, and I was the first one who ever coined that colloquial term. And Barack Obama has told folks Hillary Clinton has to be elected to maintain my legacy. Now, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are closer to each other, believe it, than than Hillary Clinton and Obama. But to get elected as a Democrat, Hillary Clinton was forced to take on a lot of Bernie Sanders, up as much as 75% of Bernie Sanders' platform, just to try to sound palatable to Bernie Sanders supporters. Bernie Sanders got more people to his campaign rallies than any other person running for president. And the media purposely didn't show it. And of course, in California, they destroyed him and stole the election from him because they said Hillary's going to be the next president. So what you had was the nationalist Donald Trump and the globalist Hillary Clinton. And the sad part about it, Mr. Nelson, is Roger Stone and Larry Nichols were two of the primary advisors behind the scenes, and Donald Trump has been getting much of his information from them.
That explains a lot. 800-450-7876, line 5. Ken in Chicago. Ken, can you make it quick for us?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. You know, Mark, I recall you speaking about a Smedley Butler a while back.
Yes, sir.
And it's surprisingly, I ran up on a few YouTubes that deal with the central bankers and how they're destroying a lot of stuff that's going on. But they take the time to mention the heroics of Smedley Butler. And they say that it was a movie loosely based on it called, I think, 7 Days in May.
That's correct.
My question becomes, you see that many of the enemy were people that were inside the United States before it became global.
Correct.
So what is the scenario today when we look at that? We look at the problems we're having now. They just seem to be repeating or continuing.
Let's give him a chance to respond because we got 2 minutes.
Okay, we got 2 minutes. Let me make this real fast here. Folks, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president, there was a coup d'etat attempt against him. Smedley Butler was the one who stopped that coup d'etat. They had selected Smedley Butler to be the guy to take over the coup d'etat. He took it to J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover didn't believe it. When it became public, they made Smedley Butler out to be a conspiratorial person when everything he said was true. Back in 2009, I did a whole big article on Facebook about Smedley Butler and the FDR thing, because everything I heard them saying about FDR was now being said about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And so I asked, would there be a Smedley Butler for Barack Hussein Obama? Folks, the Benghazi incident was a coup d'etat attempt against Barack Hussein Obama. General David Petraeus ended up being the Smedley Butler for Barack Hussein Obama. He paid for it because, like an idiot, he was having an affair with a lieutenant colonel who just happened to be an Army intelligence that was sent to him. And when he went to Obama, confessed his sins, the Republicans leaked the whole fact that he was having an affair with his lieutenant colonel, writing a biography about him.
Right, and we are at a flat out time. Real quick, Mark, how can folks reach you?
Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101. Now, the last time I did a show, I have not been able to open my emails ever since, and after this show today, I probably won't have any telephone service. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do. Love you, folks. Michelle Obama, I love you.
Thanks, Mark. Folks, we're out of here. Stay strong, stay positive, stay in the light. See you tomorrow, 4 o'clock, right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.